Okay, we'll have this, just a couple more people joining by Zoom. And so we'll begin with the silent meditation. Please join me in Gasho. Naman Nops, Naman Nops, Naman Nops. Next, we're going to actually read our pledge. For those of you. And I will also bring it up on the screen for people at home. I'll bring it up on here as well. Okay. Oh, I think not everybody's muted. Let's just mute. Sorry for the people who are here. Okay, we'll read our pledge. Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Next, we will have this chanting of the Jusege. For those who are here, it's on page 83 of your purple Seiken, the book, the hardcover book that you should see in front of you. It's on page 83. So we'll chant the Japanese and then read the English translation afterwards. Nomondops, nomondops, nomondops. Nomondops. Gagon cho se ya he she ma jo do she ya ma jo se jo jo ga ga Dai se shi sa jong vi ge se jong jong ga ga shi jong ba dong 명정제방 흑야미샤마 세부정정간 니여게지샤네 조에실방야 시게마자당 이샤데니 진리엔나이고 의샤문사이도 조조상급명 보살시야그다 가이지에게 메시가모 해석을 조각도 스다드생시모 어조만도 이여러지모 니지가 드시기 생각하게 이시가요도 고색을덕어 조다이슈주 세모시시그 그여이사이분 그석을시덕어 간내시스조마 적의상하리오 녀버드마게지 스다드미후쇼 가흐리 도시사이쇼소 시간야고가 다이세우간노 보그쇼데니 도지묘게 We're actually going to chant the English translation of this as well. So on page 117 of this red Satan service book that you have. And I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So it's on page 117 of the red say chant. And it's also on the screen. No mandops, no mandops. No mandops, no mandops. Resounds throughout the universe. May I not attain Buddhahood. I will practice a noble path, wisely, mindfully, free of greed. Seek to reach a supreme way. Be a guide to one and all. May my power shine great light to illumine and dispel the darkness of the three poisons and save all from suffering. With eyes of wisdom I'll remove the darkness of ignorance. I will close all evil paths, open gates of highest good. When I attain Buddhahood, light will shine throughout all lands, light brighter than sun and moon, outshining all heavenly lights, giving my virtues to all, not forsaking anyone. I will proclaim the Dharma like the roar of a great lion, bowing before all Buddhas, steadfastly gaining virtues, with wisdom fulfilling my vows. I shall
future. May my wisdom also shine all throughout the universe and illumine one and all. If I shall fulfill these vows, may all lands tremble with joy. From the heavens wondrous flowers rain down upon all the the virtue of Amita's vow is shared equally by all, together attaining awakened mind. We are born in the land of peace. No one else, no one else.
For joining us. For those who are joining by Zoom, you probably noticed that in the middle of chanting, I changed the microphone because I changed it over once, and then when I started chanting, I forgot to change it back again. And as you know, we've been having these issues with the microphone. Actually, I found out what the issue was. It's not the microphone. It has to do with upgrading to Windows 11 that has created all sorts of problems for us. And I was told actually that, I didn't know why this was happening, but somebody said, I wouldn't put it past Microsoft to not be so, how should I say, helpful to other software, because Microsoft has its own gathering called Teams, I guess. But anyways, whether that's the case or not, it's since I have upgraded to Microsoft 11, there's been some issues with our Zoom calling, but nonetheless, you can all hear me okay on Zoom right now. Okay, good. See, when I'm speaking like this, it's better to be on this microphone, the house microphone. Oh, hang on, just 1 second. There was somebody just joining in. What I'd like to do is begin by reading a passage from what we call the Tanisho, or Record and Lament of Divergence, which is written by one of the disciples of Shinran Shoni, who was the founder of our denomination of Buddhism. And this Tanisho or the Records of Lament of Divergence, is a very, very popular work. Although it was not written directly by Shinran Shonin, it was written by his disciple Yu Yenbo, and it was written many years after Shinran had actually passed away. But we do look at it as the direct words of Shinran, as Yu Yenbo was one of his closest disciples. Shinran Shonin, as many of you know, is the founder of our denomination, Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, and his scroll is facing the altar just to the right of the statue. And he lived from 1172 to 1263. And when he, in his life, he entered the monastery at the age of 9. He entered Mount Hiei and became what we know as a Tendai monk, and spent 20 years on Mount Hiei, trying to attain enlightenment through the practices of the monk. But unfortunately, he was unable to do so. And at the age of 29, said that he came down from Mount Hiei, and that's when he encountered what we call the Nembutsu teachings. He'd actually encountered it while he was on the mountain, but he didn't see it as an independent school. And it was then that he met up with his teacher, Honen Shonin, and he spent 6 years together with Honen Shonin. And then at the age of 35, there was an incident that happened which caused this new form of Buddhism to be banned, outlawed. And Honen Shonin and Shinran were both exiled, Honen to the southern island of Shikoku, and Shinran himself was exiled to northern Japan, to the Niigata prefecture, present-day Niigata prefecture. And there he met his wife. He got openly married. And after the exile was pardoned when he was 39, instead of returning to Kyoto, Shinran moved out to the Kanto area, just north of Tokyo. And this is where he did a lot of prolific work in spreading the teachings. And this is where he met up with this Yu Yenbo. And Yu Yenbo became a very close disciple of Shinran's. And so what happens is after Shinran had passed away, there were some misinterpretations of the teachings. And some of the other followers started interpreting it in various ways. And so this is when Yu Yenbo penned this work called The Record and Lament of Divergence, or the Tanisho. And it's made up of 18 chapters, and they're relatively short pieces. But the first 10 we see as the direct words of Shinran, and also the last 8, although they might not be the direct words, we look at them as very important to our teaching. And in chapter 13, Yu Yenbo is recollecting a conversation that he had with Shinran, and that Yu Yenbo had said that, you know, there were times where he had doubts about following this teaching, and that there were some people who were unafraid of committing evil because they said that since Amida has already become a Buddha, that we are in fact already within the grasp, and therefore we shouldn't be afraid of doing anything. Right? And so Yu Yenbo is having this discussion with Shinran, and Shinran asks Yu Yenbo, he says, Yu Yenbo, do you accept all that I say? And to this, Yu Yenbo says, yes, I do. And then Shinan asks him, he says, will you not deviate from whatever I tell you? And of course, being a disciple, Yuembo humbly agrees to this. And then Shinran says, and this is very interesting, he says, now I want you to kill 1,000 people. If you do, you will definitely attain birth. And Yuenbo is taken back by this. He's kind of shocked by what, his master would say this. And Yuenbo says, though you instruct me thus, I'm afraid it is not in my power to kill even one person. And that's when Shinran proceeds to teach him. He says, then why did you say that you would follow whatever I told you? And Shinran then continues, says, by this you should realize that if we could always act as we wished, then when I told you to kill 1,000 people in order to attain birth, you should have immediately done so. But since you lost the karmic cause inducing you to kill even a single person, you do not kill. It is not that you do not kill because your heart is good. In the same way, a person may wish not to harm anyone and yet end up killing 100 or 1,000 people. Thus he spoke of how we believe that if our hearts are good, then it is good for birth. And if our hearts are evil, it is bad for birth. Failing to realize that it is by the inconceivable working of the vow that we are actually allowed to be born into the Pure Land. There was in those days a person who had fallen into the wrong views. He asserted that since a vow has made to save the person who had committed evil, one should purposely do evil as an act for attaining birth. As rumors of misdeeds gradually spread, Shina wrote in a letter, do not take a liking to poison just because there is an antidote. This was in order to put an end to the wrong understanding. It by no means implies that evil can obstruct one's attainment of birth. So the reason why I read this passage here, so basically what Shina is saying, it's not because we think we are good or bad that we act in certain ways. It's because of our past karma that we react accordingly. So even if, we had no intentions of harming others, our acts can actually harm others if our past karma, if you will, leads up to that. And basically what Shina is saying is that we have a false understanding of thinking, I'm a good person. I remember we had as our guest a couple of times, I think. You might have remembered Mass Kodani Sensei from the Senshin Buddhist Temple in California. But whenever he came up, he loved to talk about how we have our own ego, and we always tend to sort of say, "Oh, I'm such a good person. I'm such a good person," and that's our egocentric self. And yet, in reality, it is only that our ego, and the reason why this came up to me was most recently, in the past couple of weeks, we've all seen in the news the terrible tragedy that has occurred in Turkey and Syria, with the earthquakes. And, I believe the death toll is now over 25,000 individuals. And, when I heard about this, it was deeply shocking and deeply saddening. Yet I realized somewhere within myself that I did not have the same reaction as I did in 2011 when there was an earthquake in Japan, in the Eastern Japan earthquake. I remember after that earthquake, I felt completely devastated, and I felt, I was glued to the TV Japan watching all the things that were going on. And I realized that my reaction to this earthquake in Turkey is exactly my ego, my human frailty, in that when it was Japan, it felt much closer to me because I, having been there, having lived there, having relatives over there, it made it feel very much more closer to the heart, which is a terrible thing because I think I should feel the same way with what happened in Turkey and Syria. But this is what Shinan is alluding to here, is that we have a tendency to think, when we are thinking that, oh, I'm doing good for others, or I'm thinking about others, we have a tendency to think we are good. But it's not. It's just because of our past karma. Because of my relationship with Japan, I was feeling that. And because I don't have that same relationship with Syria and Turkey, I don't feel that. I feel the tragedy, but not to that same extent. And so this, for Shinan, he realized himself that he was a being full of blind passions, and that even though he acts in compassion, it is limited. And so for such a being is the working of the Dharma that makes us realize, makes us see our true self, our egocentric self, yet at the same time, it tells us that even for such a being, that there is the working of the Dharma, the working of the Buddha, and that compassion enables me to see myself, and also makes me realize that I can do things for others as well. That realizing my own limitations is a very important aspect of this. This morning, before the service began, I was tidying up the hondo here. Yesterday, we had a fairly large memorial service for an individual, and as I was tidying up the hondo, I realized again, this is by no comparison to the Syria or Turkey earthquake, but all the people that were coming out yesterday for the memorial service had good intentions, and they thought, oh, they're coming here to give family support, etc., etc. However, as I was tidying up this morning, I noticed that the cushions that you're sitting on were all strewn about. People will move the cushions. Some of them were sitting three high, or putting it as a backstop for themselves, and so our minds are very limited in the way we think. We think, oh, I'm here to support, I'm doing something good. But when when people leave, they don't think about putting back the cushions, and so and I'm no exception. When we're thinking of only one thing, we don't think about what our actions are doing. And that's a very small example of the fact that, somebody has to go around cleaning up the cushions, but we don't think about that aspect. We only think, oh, I'm here to support the family. So, in the same sense, the Buddha said that basically all of our thoughts can be egocentric, and only through listening to the Dharma or receiving the Dharma, receiving the compassion of the Buddha, can we go beyond this? Can we see our true ignorant self, and yet at the same time transcend that ignorance? So I wanted to share with you, just because of the way I was feeling with this whole incident, with the earthquake in Syria and Turkey. And so I'd like to express my condolence to those who have lost their lives and who are still undergoing great suffering over there at this moment, and an expression of our sense of oneness. And I'd like to ask you, please join me as we put our hands together in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Thank you very much. This will conclude our regular morning service today. Thank you for attending. And I don't think there's any announcements, is there? No. Well, Fujinkai has it. Next week we have the Dana Day service. Dana Day is a day in which the Fujinkai, our Ladies Auxiliary, we have a day in which the collections from the donations from that day go to social welfare activities that will be designated by the Women's Federation, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And then also there's the Fujinkai has their annual general meeting next week, and then 2 weeks from now we have our annual general meeting. So thank you all for attending, and thank you to the guests who have come for the first time. May I ask your names or? Welcome. Is it first time here? Welcome. Thank you all to those who joined by Zoom as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sensei.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.